Have you ever thought of a parking garage as your destination beyond just parking there? Like maybe visiting a park on top of the garage or one of the stores within the parking structure? Well, in this episode of the Civil Engineering Podcast, we are going to be speaking with Tony Mette and Jay Chamberlain of THP Limited about Parksmart parking structures. They're exactly what they sound like. Parksmart is an interesting parking garage structure that incorporates finances, environment, as well as social benefits into the parking structure, really so that they become community centric. And what this will do for you as a civil engineer is it's going to help you to be more well-rounded and pick up yet another benefit for your clients or colleagues learning about the Parksmart structure. So let's jump right in. All right, now I'm excited to welcome our guests onto the podcast today, Tony Mette and Jay Chamberlain of THP Limited. Tony, Jay, welcome to the Civil Engineering Podcast.
Anthony, how are you?
Doing great. Good to have you guys. I know we're
Glad to be here.
We're going through some interesting times right now, so I'm glad you were able to carve out some time. And we're going to talk today about something that is very interesting. At least I think it's interesting. I think our listeners are going to be interested to learn more about it in Parksmart. However, before we get to that, what I think would be great is to just talk a little bit about what THP does and kind of like what each of you do, so that our listeners can get a little bit of your background in your own words before we jump in here.
Okay. So THP, we're an engineering firm that started in the 1970s. We have offices in Cleveland, Cincinnati. The original firm started in Cincinnati. The last 5-6 years is when we opened the Cleveland office. There's about 60 employees, mostly engineers and architects. We serve 4 main industries in the engineering kind of services that we provide. We did start as a structural engineering firm originally in the 1970s. So of the 4 services that we provide, we have structural engineering, parking consulting, restoration and waterproofing, and building envelope. So Jay and I will both just talk about what we do here, but I work mostly on the restoration and waterproofing service, where we focus on restoration of kind of parking garages, plazas, stadiums, outdoor structures, underground structures. Then the building envelope group is kind of pretty much restoration of pretty much small school buildings to high-rise buildings, from the whole envelope encompassing the roof. Jay, you want to kind of just talk a little bit about the parking group and what you do?
Yeah, sure. I'm a project manager in the new parking structures group. So what I do is I'll do everything from design of the parking structure itself to the functional layout of the parking garage. So that kind of goes along with our parking consultant work. Is we'll actually lay out the spaces. We'll lay out the garage on the site to figure out the most efficient parking layout. We'll design the systems for the gate management and all of that.
Additional follow-up about THP, I guess, from the standpoint, we do work nationally in these kind of divisions. We do have kind of specialty seismic work that we do engineering services in Asia and Latin America too, which is actually interesting for a few of our employees that actually travel there. But of those 60 employees, there's 8 of us that are Parksmart advisors as engineers and architects.
Okay, perfect. And that kind of leads us into our next, what we're going to talk about for today, which is Parksmart. And for those of you out there listening, the reason that I asked Tony and Jay to come on today is because, I believe that one of the goals of this podcast is to help civil engineering professionals to be as well-rounded as possible. I mean, we all know that there are many different avenues in civil engineering. There are many different components of our projects, and kind of sometimes the more you know about them, even if it's just a little bit, you have more knowledge that you can bring to your clients, to the municipalities you serve, to other colleagues across your company. And so that's why I thought this would be an interesting topic. So let's talk about Parksmart. What are the key differences of Parksmart versus traditional parking structures?
I guess traditional parking structures, pretty much when a client asks, we want to build a garage, it's how many parking spaces can I fit on this footprint for the most cost effective? Because a new garage can easily cost $20,000 to $25,000 a parking space to build. So when, I guess thinking from a traditional aspect is what's the most efficient structure and layout, and how many cars can I fit in that garage to have the best return on my investment? So Parksmart, you're kind of looking at it more holistically. You're doing that same design, but you're also it's a voluntary program where you're kind of looking at, in my new garage, how am I more energy efficient? How do I have reduced, I guess, impact on the environment? How can I make my garage efficient for space management? What other mobility services can that garage provide and kind of be connected to on the kind of the grid where it's serving? And the other thing is kind of making the parking garage a destination. As much as you may not think that, there's a lot of garages now where there's overbuilds on top of them for commercial aspects, or there's parks and that, kind of incorporating the garage into the environment. So it's kind of promoting that as a voluntary program and getting people to think differently and trying to improve that garage investment from day one.
That's interesting. So really, in a sense, it can be more than a garage.
Yeah, and it's the Parksmart, they have their standard, and we'll kind of talk about that later about how you process it, but it's kind of just a roadmap for clients and for engineers and architects to understand, how do I think about it, like you said, a little differently just than parking cars in it? What else can it provide for the community?
That's great. Now, what are some of the key benefits, kind of building on that civil engineers should be aware of for their clients? If they're dealing with clients, there might be property owners. What are some things that they should be aware of?
Yeah, right. So, typically when you talk about benefits to the client, you're always going to talk about cost. Everyone thinks the client wants to hear cost. What's going to save me the most money? However, with Parksmart, cost isn't your only benefit point there. So I guess, I don't know if you've ever heard of it, but there's this thing called the triple bottom line. And so it basically evaluates the economic, the environmental, and the social aspects of something. And then, so if you picture it as a Venn diagram, so you've got one bubble that's the economic, one that's the environmental, and one that's the social. Where they overlap, that's where you get sustainability. So I can make your parking garage cheap, but it might not last forever, and you're going to be putting a ton of money into it. I can also, we can also use halogen lights and, a bunch of non-energy efficient fixtures that are going to have a detrimental impact on the environment. So basically what you're trying to do is you're trying to sell the owner on this fact that I can give you this product that's going to help your social through helping the community. It's going to help the environment by making it more efficient and energy efficient. And then it's going to help you by making it costless over time. And a couple of ways it does that. So it's going to help the client by making a garage that's easier to maintain and more efficient. So one of the steps in Parksmart is creating a proactive maintenance manual for the client. And basically what you're doing is you're going through with the client, and you're coming up with ways that the client can do little fixes to the garage every year or every so many years that are going to in turn prevent that large maintenance item from occurring. So that'll help them keep their maintenance or their costs down on maintenance. You're going to put in energy efficient fixtures. You're going to put in LED lights. You're going to put in Energy Star rated HVAC if there's any type of office space in there. So that'll keep their running costs down. And then the social benefits is you're going to try and make the parking structure a destination, as odd as that sounds. Normally now it's a destination as you drive up, you park, and you leave.
Right. You want to get in and out.
Right. Right. So what you're trying to do here is you're trying to work aspects into this garage that will almost make people want to come to the garage just to see that aspect. So you've got an underground garage and you build a park on top of it. So the park's the destination. You've got a garage, and in the lobbies you do art installations of local artists. So, you know, people could come, and it's almost like a mini gallery where you can go look at the local art for the people. If your site's big enough and you have enough extra space, you know, you could build a park next to the garage. So instead of just doing like surface parking next to the garage, you incorporate those spots into your garage, and then you build a small park next to your parking garage. That's going to allow people to come enjoy the facility.
Seems very community centric.
Right, and that is what they were trying to do. There's also things like, you know, we're going to put bike parking in to try and have people come there for another reason as well. You know, you don't necessarily have to drive your car there.
That's great. And really that Venn diagram idea, Jay, is a great way, I think, to explain it. I guess the triple bottom line, the finance, the environment, and the social benefits of it. I think that that's great, because you can really, if you're thinking about explaining it to someone, you're a civil engineer and you're working with other consultants, you're working on a project that has a parking structure, that's an easy way to kind of throw it out there. And really, like, you know, practicing as a civil engineer myself, I know that a lot of times with these projects, there's lots of different hurdles. And one of them is, of course, public meetings and, you know, public opinions. And so anything I think that you can have with the social benefit aspect of it can actually make your job easier, or, you know, the design team's job easier in trying to seek approval on certain types of projects. So that seems like it would be a benefit. How might Parksmart have positive impacts on other parts of the site or the property, if any?
So that'll kind of, you know, it relates back to the last question, kind of, or at least part of my answer, where, you know, you're not just developing the site with a gray box. You're developing the site with a destination, or a mobility hub, if you want to call it that as well. You know, I'm going to have.
What do you mean by that? When you say mobility hub, for those not familiar with it, can you talk on that?
Right. So in most parking garages, you're parking your car and you're walking away. In a Parksmart parking garage, you are trying to locate the garage so that it's close with mass transit. That's one of the big key features. If you can get a bus stop right out front of your garage so that people can come downtown, park, and then hop on mass transit and travel around town, that's going to be a big plus. If you've got bike parking so that people can ride their bikes around downtown and then come park their bike in your garage so that it's safe, you know, whereas just leaving it on the street or chaining it to a meter or something like that, it's going to help out a lot. And then also items like having a zip car, for instance, like a car sharing program.
Right.
Just having dedicated spots in your parking facility for those types of programs helps make it just kind of more of a mobility center than just a parking garage.
It's really interesting. I mean, really what you're talking about here is, and I'm exaggerating a little bit, but you're talking almost like a mini city. You know, like you're starting to think about, like, within this structure, like how many different components can I have to it, whether it's a park or, you know, the shared parking, the car ride, you know, maybe one of those bicycle stations outside, or, you know, whatever the case may be. But I like the idea of it is very holistic, like Tony said, and it is very much maximizing, you know, your space, right? We live in a world where, you know, real estate is valuable and you want to kind of maximize every inch of it. And this sounds like a way to do it where you can really be, again, community centric and build something that people are going to be much more happier about than just a structure that someone drives in and drives out of. So that's really great. Can you talk briefly about the history of Parksmart and how you became interested or involved with it?
Yeah. I guess it's kind of, if you look at the history of how it came about, it's interesting because it was in the 1990s when the U.S. Green Building Council started, and that kind of developed a LEED rating system. So you have these buildings that are getting rated and trying to get certified. And at that time, they saw parking, cars, garages as part of the problem. So there was this void kind of existed in the industry for all these garages being built. The LEED system, it was a negative, or it was a part of the problem to have a parking garage. So it was in late 2000s when the Green Parking Council started to kind of fill that void, that there's cities that right now cars, who know, 20 years from now when my kids are older, who knows what the transportation options there exist, but, and it's fast evolving like everything else today, but garages are still being built left and right now as these cities grow and we become more urban. So that void was kind of started and filled with this green garage parking council. So that started in the late 2000s. So at that point, the US GBC looked at it and said, we need to kind of merge with and kind of adopt and kind of put this under our umbrella. This makes sense. We should be looking at it holistically, kind of the same way we're looking at parking garages. How does it affect the entire community? And how can we incorporate, if we have a lead building here and there's a garage there, how do we incorporate this and improve the entire system? So that was kind of, when that merged, there was a merger kind of in the, about 2014 where Parksmart was brought in under the US GBC, and it's kind of where this all started. So there's a long history there from the 1990s to almost 2015 for this whole process to happen. But
it's interesting. I mean, it is interesting that, yeah, like I said, the holistic is the best word I think to describe it. And you can see that this is something that I think will continue to happen with all different aspects and components of a project site. I mean, right, we're talking about parking garage, but it's already applied to other things and other avenues and other aspects of it. Whether you're, the lobby of a building becomes something else, and things are evolving, which is why I think that this is a really interesting topic. Now, in terms of the design side of things and the design team, what additional technical knowledge is needed from the design team if you're incorporating a Parksmart into your site?
Right. So really you need to kind of have knowledge of the current technology. That's the best way. So, all right, let me start over. So each of your design team members is going to kind of have a different knowledge base, right? Your mechanical engineer, you're going to want them to be up on all of the current most efficient lighting systems, all of the lighting control systems like photocells, so that if we're getting light, if it's an open parking garage and I'm getting daylight in there, I don't need all of the lights in the parking garage on. I'm just wasting electricity. So if you've got photocell sensors in there, then those lights could turn off when they're not needed and turn on when they're needed. Also, if you've got offices or any type of space in there, if you've got a retail space because it's a mixed use component, then you're going to want those energy efficient systems. From a structural aspect, your team is going to want to know a significant amount about durability measures of parking structures, because what you're going to want to do is, the idea is to build a parking garage that is going to need isn't going to need major maintenance for 30 years or something like that. So if you incorporate a bunch of nice solid durability measures into your project, then you're deferring any major maintenance out several years, and you're going to benefit the client that way. From a civil aspect, it's good to know about low impact developments. So basically rainwater runoff. Right now, if you've got a parking lot, when it rains, all that rain is going straight to the storm sewers, and then it's going to start overloading your infrastructure, which is why a lot of municipalities make you put giant detention tanks on your properties. However, with Parksmart, they're going to reward you if you put a green roof on your project to help limit that runoff. If the landscaping around the project is going to help absorb some of that water. If you're going to use permeable pavements around the project, so that some of that runoff is just going to get absorbed in by that permeable pavement. Then, as far as your parking consultant's really going to want to know about the most current technology in gate equipment. So one of the other big aspects is limiting the time it takes the user to get to their car and then be back on the street. So we don't want people sitting in the garage idling. I'm sure we've all been in parking garages, especially after an event,
right,
where you're in a line just waiting to queue to get out of this parking garage. And so all these cars are just sitting there idling. So the goal is to try and put technology in this parking structure that allows your patrons to get out as soon as possible. And then also to put technology in like single space detection. So basically each parking space has a green light above it. If there's a car in the spot, the light's red. If there's not a car in the spot, it's green, so that you're not spending all this time circling this parking garage trying to find a parking space.
Wow. So Jay, what's an example of how you might shorten the lines? Like what if you have something that you could just share, that would be an example of that? Because that sounds like it's a big problem that could be.
Right. So one of the key things that everyone's doing right now is pay on foot machines. So, you take your ticket with you. Instead of leaving the ticket in the car, you're taking your ticket with you. And when you come back into the parking garage, you're just getting to the machine, you're putting in your ticket, you're paying, you're getting in your car. And then all you got to do is when you pull up to the machine, you're just throwing your ticket in.
Right. There's no line. You don't have to wait online to pay or anything like that.
Right. Yeah. You're not waiting on everyone trying to get their credit card to work. And another thing.
I think a lot of universities that sell these permits, you have the radio frequency between a card in your car and the machine. Instead of having to hold out a tag and let it scan it, it picks your car up as you approach the gate. So the gate just automatically opens. You're really not stopping once you hit that gate. You're relying on that radio frequency to pick you up and just open and close the gate for you. So it's a constant flow of in and out traffic.
Right. That's great. And one follow-up question on this is, I know you guys are Parksmart advisors, right? What does that mean? And do you have to be one to be involved in this design? And, we're talking about the design right now, so just want to understand that part of it.
No, I mean, from the and that's something we kind of skipped over. So in Parksmart, there's kind of three main categories. You have the management category of how the garage is managed, from pricing to recycling programs. You have the programming of the garage, of kind of how you've, from the placemaking, making it a kind of programming it into the community. And there's the third category is the technology and kind of structural design. Those are the three main categories. Then you have a fourth one for innovation. But from the standpoint, I think the big thing that THP was kind of on the forefront is kind of getting to know the program, because as structural engineers, we have the division of parking consultants, where we're kind of doing the layout, functional design, architecture of the garage too. So it's kind of knowing kind of the standard and measures. You're educating your clients about this. So when you do a certification, it's the design team just as much as the owner. If the owner's the best owner is when they have a project manager that's enthusiastic, and that's part of their mission as the owner. They're looking at it, we're making this a sustainable structure, because they're highly involved in kind of the programming, setting up the garage afterwards, and making sure it's just not during the design process. You're looking at it, once I have this garage, how do I maintain it, which is cost beneficial to us, using the LED lighting to the different aspects of how do I program this garage. So it's more of understanding the manual and being able to educate maybe a new owner about it and how to think about it if you're not familiar with it. Or so it's nice to kind of go through the class, get the certification as an advisor, but you can download the manual, understand it, and it's just kind of if you don't certify your garage, it's nice to start thinking that way for the whole process of how do we build better at the end of the day.
Sure.
And that's something THP was kind of, as a parking consultant, we're kind of on the forefront of thinking through that. It's something they promoted.
Okay, that's great. And I think, listen, a lot of listeners are often looking for additional certifications, and if parking garages is something that they work on a regular basis and this Parksmart idea resonates with you, it may be something, of course, to look into. So it's good to know that is available. All right, last question around this topic of Parksmart. Obviously one of the things that we deal with as civil engineers in getting projects approved is, permits and things of that nature. Are there typically additional permits that are needed from a municipality for a Parksmart structure?
No additional permits. I think it's kind of similar to certifying a LEED building. You have to document. There's all these measures to get certified as Parksmart. You're kind of going through the point system. What makes sense? What's important to me? For some people, where you put a garage, you may not have. It may not there's no biking around, so we're not going to have a bike rental or a bike hub there. But it's kind of looking at it of, you have to document all those points, and it may be as simple as a photo is what is needed when you apply for the certification of, here's our bike rental hub. So there's no additional points. It's just a documentation you need to go through the process to get it certified to become a smart garage.
Okay. All right. That's good to know. And really, if you think about it, I mean, in terms of permitting and regulations, I mean, I would almost think that, a garage like this in a lot of instances sounds like it's better, quote unquote, more functional, has a lot of real social community benefits to it. So it's not like, you would have to necessarily have additional permits, but from that side of it, I can see, Tony, what you're saying. Just like LEED, you got to have all that documentation to show the different benefits that you built into it, and for the certification.
Important from the beginning is knowing up front if you're going to certify it as a Parksmart garage, because there's some measures you have to interact with the contractor, get some documentation. So if you know that up front, you can make the process pretty streamlined. And to say, we need to collect this information, and most of the information is going to be a submittal, or you're going to be on a site visit and you're getting a photo as the garage is being built. So you're going to have the information. It's just kind of knowing as you do it, I have it documented and we're done, and you can make it a pretty simple process.
Great. All right. So there you have it. That's kind of Parksmart in a bit of a nutshell there. And you can, of course, go to parksmart.gbci.org, and you can download a lot of more information, kind of as Tony referenced, and you can read up on it a little bit more. But, I just wanted to talk to Jay and Tony to get some input from their side and having experience with this. So what we're going to do now is just take a short break. We're going to come back and wrap up with our hot seat segment and just ask Tony and Jay a couple of career related questions. So stick with us. I hope you are enjoying this episode of the Civil Engineering Podcast, which is produced by the Engineering Management Institute. Please be sure to subscribe to our YouTube channel here for more podcast episodes and for all of our Engineering Manager 80/20 Shorts videos that we publish weekly, where we interview successful engineering managers. Now it's time to jump into our Civil Engineering Hot Seat segment. All right, I am back with Tony Mette and Jay Chamberlain of THP Limited, and we're here now for our civil engineering hot seat segment. We're going to throw these guys a couple of career curveball type questions. All right, I'm going to go with you first here, Jay. Are there any specific routines that you practice every day? For example, something you do every day in the morning? Do you do meetings or something at certain times of the day that you found to be helpful when you tackle your days?
Yeah, drink coffee.
Hey, that helps.
Yeah, it helps. It makes my day so much better. The one thing I do try to start my day off with every day is I try to come up with a to-do list. In order to stay on track a lot of times, especially now working from home, which has just been a whole different animal, it really helps me to head down to my office, get on my computer, run through my emails, and then kind of develop a to-do list. And I will, sometimes I'll get pretty specific with it, because if you got only major items on that to-do list, it really starts to get daunting.
Sure.
So it's always nice to throw some easy ones on there just to get some X's.
Sure. Get some momentum going.
Right. And then another thing I like to do now also, which I never did when I was back in the office, is clean my desk every single night before I go upstairs and call it quits for the day, because there's nothing worse than coming down to your office in the morning and just having the last thing you were working on that day spread out all over the place.
Sure. No, interesting. Sounds like you got a good, setup routine and shutdown routine. So
right.
Both ends of the day.
I used to have better rituals before the kids were born. I would try to every morning when I woke up, I try to meditate for 10 minutes before I leave for the office. Just wake up, kind of get in the right headspace, and then head into the office. And I felt like that really worked out. But, ever since the sleepless nights started, little difficult to get out of bed a little early to want to go ahead and meditate.
Yeah, no, it's interesting. I had a guest recently mention that actually. She runs her own civil firm, and she said that's been a huge game changer for her doing the meditation thing in the morning. So interesting. How about you, Tony? Any routines or habits that you practice that have you found to be very helpful for you that you do regularly?
I think Jay's point, the to-do list is very important anymore. And it may be the simplest task to feel like you accomplished something that day, because some days you get phone call after phone call, which you're still getting stuff done, but to be sit here, it seems like anymore, you cannot plan out your day 100%. So you kind of have to roll with the punches and see there's an issue that comes up on a project. We need help on this. So
Right.
kind of having a simple to-do list of something realistic that you're trying to accomplish, I think is important.
That's the key word, realistic. All right, Tony, let's stick with you. Can you think of a book that's been helpful for you in your career, life in general? It doesn't have to be engineering related. It could be any book that you just remember, like you always remember it because it was helpful for you.
I'm going to probably go about that a different way. I think the thing I regret I had 4 brothers growing up, so it seems like reading was not probably at the forefront of what we did. A lot of outdoor activities and running around. But I think now that you kind of see it in life, the importance of it and how enjoyable it is now. I guess I have 3 younger kids, and we've made a habit to read with them a lot more. So
That's great.
right now I'm reading the Harry Potter series to my daughter, and we're right about halfway through The Prisoner of Azkaban. So I read the Harry Potter books in college. I enjoyed them. And so we're kind of doing that with my daughter as something to show her. Every night she looks forward before bed. Kind of some of the scary parts we kind of have to edit out that
Yeah.
I read this before bed, but yeah, it's something she looks forward to do. And I think she sees her parents reading more. And I think that it's going to be important and it'll be beneficial for her growing
That's
up. So
great.
if you have the opportunity of doing that with your kids, I think is important.
That's great. Yeah, I'm laughing because my son's on book number 4, and we just watched Azkaban the movie because he finished the book, so he wanted to watch the movie, and yeah, he's loving it. And you know what, really, Tony's point is a good one. Is that you kind of learn from life experiences, right? So you maybe didn't read as much growing up, and now you're getting into it, and you can reflect on that. So I think that that's an important lesson there. How about you, Jay? Any books that stand out for you?
Oh God, I'd love to say there is, but not really. My mentor will tell you that on my my goal list I've had for the past like 3 years now is I want to start reading a book just about business practices and engineering management a month. But so far I've read 0 books on that. So he hounds me every time we talk about it. Have you started reading those books yet? And I'm like, no, I need to do it. I've got to start getting on that track.
Yeah, well, listen, people are busy. You got to incorporate things in where you can. Luckily, there's audiobooks and podcasts and things like that
Right.
that can be helpful for certain topics. So how about this question for you, Jay? If you think about your career to date, and you've had, I'm sure, several different managers, maybe you work for supervisor, department managers, without, you don't have to name any names, but just in general, like when you think of like a manager that you felt has been a great manager, you really enjoyed working with them, what are some of the characteristics of a great manager in kind of the world we live in the civil world, that you would say that would jump out at you?
Yeah, I'd say my best manager was one that really helped me instill confidence in myself. Because I think one of the struggles, especially with engineers right out of school, is you get out into the field and all of a sudden all the stuff you learned in school, you're like, did I learn enough? Do I know enough to be successful? And the answer is, yeah, you do. You just have to have the confidence in yourself to do it. So I think early on in your career and early on in my career, I had a manager that was really, really good at, just instilling that, like, hey, you know what you're doing. You're not like, stop second guessing yourself. Just do it. Like and one that doesn't micromanage. That can be the worst, because having a manager that micromanages can be really detrimental to your confidence, I feel like. Because if they're constantly picking on you, like, have you done this yet? Have you done this yet? Have you gotten this taken care of? That can start to damage your confidence. And I think I feel like I've said it 20 times now, but confidence, someone that can instill confidence in you is just key, and it's super important, I feel like, for young engineers to have someone in there managing them that can help them grow into that.
Yeah, I mean, I say it all the time to people when they ask, like, oh, what skill should I focus on the most in terms of being effective manager or leader in the engineering? And I always go back to, like, you got to be confident. Like, you can learn all the skills in the world, but, you know, if you're not really confident in what you're doing, it's going to affect the way you approach people, the way you lead your teams, the way you talk with clients. And so definitely confidence can't be understated. Tony, how about you? And whether it's supervisors and mentors, you know, what have you found the people that you've worked with that you find have felt, oh, that was a great manager, great supervisor, great project leader? What characteristics did they exhibit?
I think you need to find somebody that you're comfortable talking to. They have an open door policy. I think everybody says no questions are a dumb question. I think the big thing I learned growing up or starting out is anybody's willing to help you as long as you come ahead of time and you've thought through something. So you may come to your boss and you've thought through a problem, you put time in, but you're completely wrong. I think having a boss that will sit there and say, you've thought through this, that's great. Let's look at it a different direction, and here's why. So you kind of build your confidence that they're there to help you, coach you along, but they also need to trust you. And as young engineers, you need to think through you can't just go into your boss and say, I need help with this, and you put no thought into it. I think it's very important to kind of start to think for yourself, become confident, and just have somebody that's there to bounce ideas off, and they're there to have your back to help you out. I think is important.
That's great. Yeah, no, I think, you know, having someone that'll kind of listen to you and have those conversations can be really important to help you make decisions and, you know, go through we all know our projects get complex and there's lots of issues to be discussed. So that's great. All right, guys, last question here. We call this the civil engineering career elevator advice question. So if you got an elevator with a civil engineer and you had about 30 to 40 seconds with him or her, and you could give them some career advice in about 30 to 40 seconds, what would you tell that individual? Tony, let's start with you. What would you tell them in 30, 40 seconds?
I guess as a young engineer, you always need to figure out you know all these equations. You just need to know you're solving the right problem. What is the problem the client has, and what am I solving? I mean, it's important to step back from the problem and actually draw yourself a sketch or here's a rendering. Sit back and actually think through it before you start trying to put an equation to it. If you're trying to detail how a connection is going to occur in a building, it's almost more important to draw a solution before you put numbers to it, so you can actually visualize it. I think is knowing you're solving the right problem and thinking through it. I think is very important.
Awesome. How about you, Jay?
Oh yeah, I think Tony kind of touched on it in his answer to the previous question, but you know, they always say there's no dumb questions, and that's true. There can be uneducated questions, but there's no really dumb questions. I talk to the guys I work with all the time about this. I guess my mentees, I'd call them, is don't be afraid to ask questions, but make sure they're educated. I don't ever want you to come to me and say, I don't know how to do this. Like, you can be completely wrong, but at least have thought about the question before you come to me. And I'll sit down and I'll walk you through it, but I'm going to have much more respect for you if you at least tried at first. And I think that's the case with a lot of managers, is they want to see that you put some effort in before you just come to them and say, I don't know.
That's great. Yeah, I guess what I'm hearing from both of you there combined is kind of like,
you don't want to work for Jay. It's pretty much what you're
hearing. No, bring solutions to the table, right? Bring solutions to the table. I mean, whether it's for a client, whether it's, you know, coming to your supervisor and saying, hey, we got this problem, but I think we can do this. You know, when you come to the table with solutions, it's a lot more valuable than if you just come with questions and you're not quite clear on everything. So that's very helpful. So Tony Mette, Jay Chamberlain of THP Limited, I want to thank you so much for spending some time here with us on the Civil Engineering Podcast, sharing information about Parksmart and also offering some kind of career thoughts and advice. Thanks so much, guys, for taking the time.
Thank you, Anthony.
It was fun, Anthony.
I hope you enjoyed this episode of the Civil Engineering Podcast on YouTube, produced by the Engineering Management Institute. We're always looking for new ways to help engineers become effective managers and leaders. You can view all of our content on our website at engineeringmanagementinstitute.org, and be sure to subscribe to our YouTube channel here for our weekly videos. Until next time, please continue to engineer your own success.